Hello, my name is Tobias Mielke, and today we will talk about sustainability versus profit, ethical dilemma in modern business. Did you know that accordingly to the World Health Organization, 9 out of 10 people breathe air containing high level of pollutants? Yes, unfortunately, this is true. This is a dear topic to me because as an undergrad, one of my majors was environmental science, and I had the opportunity to learn how the industrial process affects the environment and our health. During this presentation, we will talk a little bit about environmental toxicology, the impacts on our health, and a little bit about the science behind it, the importance of corporate social responsibility, the influence of industry on policy and regulations, challenges posed by conflicts of interest, greenwashing, and bribery. The article titled "The Climate Scientists Fossil Fuel Companies Can't Stand," published by the Wall Street Journal, highlights Robert Howard research. Dr. Howard is a teacher from Cornell University. He's a scientist researching climate impacts of methane from LNG exports. LNG stands for liquefied natural gas, and we will talk later on the impacts of methane also. Howard argues that LNG is actually worse for the environment than coal because of methane leaks, creating debates within the oil and gas industry. And his findings ended up influencing USA policies. President Biden put a pause on new LNG export approvals in early 2024. It mainly affected the East Coast. But not everyone is on board. The oil and gas industry, especially companies like EQT, the largest natural gas producer in the US, highly disagree, and they're pushing a big pushback. They claim that LNG is crucial in helping developing countries to cut down on coal use, which is even dirtier than LNG. That's what they claim. While environmentalists support Howard's stance, there is a big pushback from the industry calling his research based because it did not went through peer review. This battle reflects the ongoing tension between protecting the environment and sustaining energy demands and economic interests. As we may see on the side here, it's an example of fracking that is used for the exploration of LNG, and we can see how the groundwater table it's right on top. I read Dr. Howard research and it mentions something interesting. It's the risk of the chemicals that are used on fracking for breaking the soil and how there is a risk for that chemicals to leak to the groundwater. And this is a serious problem. We will talk a little bit about water in the next slides. Also, we can see in the bottom CH4 stands for methane. It's a chemical formula of methane, and in the right GWP stands for global warm potential, and we can see how methane has the potential to hold heat 23 times more than CO2, that is what is released from coal. I wanted to quickly talk about environmental toxicology and a little bit about the science behind it. Most of the research done in environmental toxicology is done based on acute exposure, that is a very quick and with high levels of the toxicant, while that is not the real scenario in the environment. Usually we are exposed to chronic exposure, that is little by little by little during a long period of time, and then you see the effects. So most of our guidelines and regulations are based on the acute research. We are not thinking a little bit about how little exposures over a long period of time can affect us. I want to talk about the example of lead and arsenic. They were metals that were used for poison for pesticides, and they were carcinogens. The arsenic, for example, was a carcinogen, a metabolic disruptor, and lead was bring damage to the brain, kidney, blood, and bones, especially to kids. And lead was not only used in pesticides, was also used in paints, and it was a very big problem with kids because they will touch the walls and then they will put their hands in their mouth, and it caused very big problems. In this slide, we can see the water report from the Environmental Working Group, a non-profit organization. The work is very interesting. You can check on their website. This not only has arsenic, but it also has radium, and it's very close to the legal limit. And I want to mention something interesting from the legal limit. It was established in 1976, this legal limit. So imagine all the research that came out, which can make that limit go down. And it was based on cost for radium removal as calculated at the time that the standard was set. This limit does not fully protect against the risk of cancer due to radium exposure. This is an example of the importance for strong environmental regulations and the impact of the industry on our health. So everything we talked about, the chemicals, the metals, the chemicals in the water quality, fracking, it all comes to social responsibility and environmental regulation. It is very important for corporate social responsibility to be taken serious and companies to set aside profit and go beyond to address social and environmental issues. It is not only important to have CSR, corporate social responsibility, but also to have strong regulations that are strictly enforced, because some companies will just don't follow, and if the regulation is there but is not strictly enforced, they will also not follow. So it's very important to have a strict enforcement of the laws and the regulations, so the companies will be very careful with how their product and their manufacturing process is affecting the environment and public health. A good example that I like is from Ben & Jerry's, that does not only talks about sustainability, but they are also mentioning their own weak points and what they're doing to improve. As we see here, our goal is to have 100% of our package be free of petroleum-based plastic, and we want it to be reusable, compostable, or recycled by 2025. We have been working to reduce our overall impact of the environment for many years, and we know we have more to do. For me, that is a very good statement, and it's impressive that the company says that they have more to do and that they haven't done everything yet. Bribery, conflicts of interest, and industry influence are significant ethical challenges in business. Bribery distorts fair competition by making decisions based on financial incentives, not merit. This leads to inefficiency and inflated costs for the customers. Conflicts of interest, such as when personal gains affect professional judgment, can erode trust and fairness in both the public and the private sector. Industry influence becomes problematic when lobbying leads to changes over policy decisions, particularly through the revolving door between regulators and industries. This undermines public confidence in business and government. A good example is the chicken industry, where the industry pushes forward and uses their lobbying personnel to don't put any regulations on chicken and the presence of salmonella. Salmonella can make you sick and even kill you, but it's not illegal to sell chicken with salmonella. In the stores, you don't have any label that says salmonella free. To build long-term trust, businesses must go beyond legal compliance, prioritizing transparency and ethical responsibility. Acting with integrity is essential to ensure both business success and positive impact on society. I want you guys to pay attention to these bubbles. We can see here that it says federal, and then it says pharmaceutical or Goldman Sachs, and then we will have Monsanto in the next slide. And we can see how there's names of people in the middle, and those people are people that have been working for the federal government and then or before for the private sector. And this is very interesting how it can show conflict of interest and how the industry can have influence, because these people that worked for the federal government and then hired in the private sector, and then they're used for lobbying and to change change the view of the policymakers and make policies on what they need to maximize their profits. As we may see, in pharmaceuticals, Pfizer is one of the companies that appears the most there, hiring federal government personnel. And here we can see from the Office of Public Affairs of the US Department of Justice, Pfizer HCP Corporation agrees to pay 15 million penalty to resolve foreign bribery investigation. Again, here we can see another more cases of bribery with Monsanto and Goldman Sachs, and this is a very important topic because corporations, they're very strong and they have a lot of power and they can cause a lot of changes in the industry and the regulations for their favor. This is a sad example of companies using the good marketing of sustainability for their own good when they're not actually being sustainable, and it's called greenwashing. Here it's an example of the Wall Street Journal talking about TerraCycle partners, including Coca-Cola, P&G, to change recycle labels after settling lawsuit. Basically, they were putting TerraCycle symbols, meaning that their products were recycled by TerraCycle, but they were not actually being recycled. They were going to landfills, and that was actually causing bigger prices for clients to be recycled, but they were not being recycled. I know I went a bit beyond my time. I tried to keep it on time, but I felt it was important to discuss these topics and to let them very clear. So to conclude, the balance between sustainability and profit is critical in today's business landscape. While companies must remain profitable, they also have a responsibility to operate ethically, considering the long-term environmental and social impacts of their actions. It's very important. Bribery, conflicts of interest, and industry influence undermine corporate social responsibility and damage public trust. To move forward with businesses must adopt strict regulations and transparent practices, not only to comply with laws, but also to ensure that they contribute to a more sustainable and ethical future. Here, I'm leaving two very good. One is a movie based in real fact, and the other is a documentary. I really recommend you guys to watch it. It's called Poison, the documentary, and the movie Dark Waters. It's amazing. You will be surprised with what you see, and if you like the topic and you want to have further knowledge, I super recommend.